This video will discuss the research topics and methods along with our findings and conclusions for our Biostats research video project. This video was put together by Katie Jones, Manny Latillo, Brenna Rockwall, Tiba Salah, and Reese Western. Our research topics look at the health and healthcare services at The Ohio State University. We specifically looked at the Will Student Health Center. The Will Student Health Center is a Joint Commission accredited outpatient facility providing a variety of healthcare services to the student population, and it is located directly on Ohio State's campus. Our research topic looked at health and healthcare services at The Ohio State University. We specifically looked at the Will Student Health Center. The Will Student Health Center is a Joint Commission accredited outpatient facility providing a variety of healthcare services to the student population. The Will Student Health Center is located directly on Ohio State's campus near the recreational facility. We were interested in pursuing this topic because most of the members in our group are public health majors. We thought it would be interesting to look at how students who attend Ohio State University use this resource and what factors may hinder a student's use of health and healthcare services at Ohio State University. It is important to look at this research because it may show improvements that Ohio State may want to make in terms of convenience and utilization of health and healthcare services on campus. Throughout our research, we wanted to examine results for 3 different research questions. The research questions were: 1. Does type of health insurance relate to utilization of on-campus health services? 2. Does where a student live relate to the utilization of on-campus health services? And 3, does convenience of use relate to utilization of on-campus health services? In the next slide, we will discuss our methods for data collection.
Hi, this is Brenna Rockwall presenting the first half of the results, starting with the demographics. The demographics were not very widely distributed. We received 83 responses, of which most were white fourth-year women. 74.7% of our respondents were white, and 91.6% of the total respondents were female, with only 8.4% being male. 62.7% were seniors, with an overall mean age of approximately 20 years. The median was 21 years. Because these numbers are rather close, we can assume that there is not significant skew in the distribution of ages. The standard deviation was approximately 1.3. Only 5.9% of respondents were freshmen, with sophomores making up 14.5% of the data and juniors 16.9%. In terms of race, the rest of the respondents were 10.8% Black or African American, 13.3% Asian, and 1.2% non-specified other. Our first hypothesis test sought to answer our first research question of does insurance status relate to utilization of on-campus health services? Our null hypothesis was that there is no association between insurance status and a student's decision to use on-campus health services. Our alternate hypothesis is that there is an association between the two. We categorized the responses of insurance status into outside insurance, which included both people with and without the WillSCare insurance supplement, student health insurance, which includes those with OSU's own insurance plan, and those with no health insurance. Our dependent variable was the respondent's self-reported level of which insurance status affected their decision to use on-campus health services, which was broken down into the categories of does not affect my decision, slightly affects my decision, and strongly affects my decision. We also had a single empty response, which was left out of the calculation. We analyzed this data with a Fisher's exact test, which resulted in a p-value of 0.008. This falls below our significance level of 0.05, and so we rejected the null hypothesis. There is significant evidence to suggest that there is an association between insurance status and the decision to use on-campus health services. Our second hypothesis test also sought to answer the question of whether insurance status related to the utilization of on-campus health services. However, this test explored the relationship between the number of visits and insurance status rather than the level to which the respondents said insurance affected their decision. Our null hypothesis is that there is no association between insurance status and the number of visits to on-campus health services, while our alternate hypothesis states that there is an association between the two. We used the same categories of insurance as the last test. However, this time, the The dependent variable was the number of visits that the respondents have had to on-campus health centers while at OSU. For this, we also used a Fisher's exact test, which resulted in a p-value of 0.5684. With this, we failed to reject the null hypothesis. There is not significant evidence to suggest that there is an association between insurance status and the number of visits to on-campus health centers.
Our second research question addressed visits by location. We were curious as to whether or not where a student lives relates to their utilization of on-campus health services. Here we looked at the relationship between where a student lives, our independent variable, broken down into the categories shown here, including off-campus with parents, off-campus without parents, 0 to 5 miles from OSU, off-campus without parents, more than 5 miles from OSU, and OSU dorms / on-campus. And compare that to the number of visits they made to on-campus health services, our dependent variable, broken down into 0 to 4 visits, 5 to 8 visits, or 9 to 11 and more visits. Our null hypothesis is that there is no association between location in reference to campus and the number of visits a student makes to on-campus medical resources. Our alternative hypothesis is that there is an association between location in reference to campus and the number of visits a student makes to on-campus medical resources. When looking at our results, a Fisher's exact test was used. Given a p-value of 0.9481, which is greater than 0.05, we fail to reject the null hypothesis, and it is therefore very unlikely that there is an association between location in reference to campus and the number of visits a student makes to on-campus medical resources. Our third research question looked at whether convenience of use related to utilization of on-campus health services. Our independent variable was convenience, given as a yes or a no, and our dependent variable was the strength convenience has on the decision, given as does not affect my decision, slightly affects my decision, or strongly affects my decision. The data for these variables are shown here. Our null hypothesis is that there is no association between convenience and the decision to use on-campus medical resources. Our alternative hypothesis is that there is an association between convenience and the decision a student makes to use on-campus medical resources. The hypothesis test used for convenience by decision was a Fisher's exact test. Given the resulting p-value of 0.1622, we fail to reject the null hypothesis, meaning there is not significant evidence to suggest convenience has an effect on whether or not a student decides to use on-campus medical resources. Continuing to address our third research question of whether or not convenience of use relates to the utilization of on-campus health services, we looked at the relationship between convenience and the number of visits to on-campus health services. Our independent variable was convenience, again given as a yes or a no, and our dependent variable was the number of visits, broken down into categories of 0 to 4 visits, 5 to 8 visits, or 9 to 11 and more visits. Our null hypothesis is that there is no association between convenience and the number of visits to on-campus health services, while our alternative hypothesis states that there is an association between the two. For this, we also used a Fisher's exact test, which resulted in a p-value of 0.1160. With this, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Thus, there is not significant evidence to suggest that there is an association between convenience and the number of visits to on-campus health centers.
Hello, my name is Emmanuel Atio, and I will be discussing the conclusions that we were able to make based off of the data we obtained from our survey on health and healthcare at Ohio State. So, we ran 5 hypothesis tests, specifically 5 Fisher exact tests. And out of all of them, we were able to learn that we were not able to draw associations between a lot of variables that we tested. So, with a p-value of 0.568, we were not able to associate insurance status affecting the number of visits students took to use on-campus health services. With a p-value of 0.9481, we were not able to draw an association between where a student lives and the number of visits they took to on-campus health resources. With a p-value of 0.622, we were also not able to draw an association between the convenience of scheduling health appointments and the number of visits to on-campus health resources. And lastly, with a p-value of 0.116, we were not able to draw an association between where a student lives and their decision to use on-campus health services. The only association we were able to find with our hypothesis testing was that students' health insurance status is associated with the decision to use on-campus health services. When looking at the data as well as the setup of our study, there are a few limitations that must be addressed. To start, there was the use of objective reporting. With a survey, we are asking subjects to give us the most accurate answer possible. However, two subjects can look at the same answer and interpret them differently, and thus that self-report can create inconsistencies. Additionally, since insurance, and specifically health insurance, is a somewhat complex topic, if a subject did not understand their insurance, what it may provide, or how they obtained it, that can also lead to inconsistencies in how they would answer the question. Secondly, there was the use of convenience sampling. Since we, our group members, only used those as subjects in our immediate networks, and whether they be in class or socially, we were not able to likely get a true representation of the undergraduate student body here at Ohio State. Lastly, we cannot claim causality between two variables. Just because we were able to draw an association between a student's health insurance status and their decision to use on-campus health services does not mean that that directly affects the relationship, or that relationship directly exists. That means we need to use further research and further studies in order to bolster any claims from this study that we did on our own. That means we need to look at other factors that are playing a role in a student's use of on-campus health services. Is there something with the care, the cost, or maybe even alternative sources like Planned Parenthood, urgent care facilities that are near to campus? Additionally, there needs to be research on strategies to promote the use of on-campus health services to improve the outcome for future undergraduate students. Thank you for your time and paying attention to this presentation for Biostatistics 2210, focusing on a survey about health and health services at Ohio State.